Conflict, intimacy, or death by 1,000 cuts? That's the question. Are your conflicts with your significant other, are they growing you closer together as a couple? Or is it like 1,000 cuts where each time is another cut and you're bleeding out slowly and it's really making you less intimate and less close? That's the question that we're going to talk about today. Share, subscribe, please give me a 5-star review. That's how other people can hear about this program, and thank you for your time. Let's talk about conflict. First of all, conflict is normal, natural, and neutral. And that's a hard one to really grasp because I'll tell you, for most of my life, I did not agree that it was neutral. And because it definitely was not neutral for me. But really, if you think about it, it's normal because we're all sinners and we're all different. So we're going to have conflict, and it's natural because of the same thing. And it's neutral because it really depends on how we go about conflict, whether it's going to bring us closer together or whether it's going to keep us hurting each other and making it worse. So I feel like with conflict resolution with your personal partner, the most important thing is to have a plan beforehand. You're going to have conflict. So you really have to have a way to have conflict together that works for you both. And it's not going to be the same for every couple. The big thing is your conflict, is that benefiting both of you? Sometimes it'll benefit one and they're happy with it, but it's chronically not benefiting the other person. And so that is important because it really has to be where it's benefiting you both, or it's not going to bring you closer together. For example, my style of conflict that I grew up with was avoid, avoid, avoid at all costs. I learned that is not a great way of dealing with conflict. In 20 years of my marriage, not being able to talk about conflict because at the time my spouse came from even more avoiding of conflict, there is never ever an opportunity to resolve any conflict. And instead, if I brought anything up, there was a stonewalling. I'd be ignored for 6 days. Don't bring it up again, or I'd be ignored another 6 days. So I just stopped bringing up conflict. That was not good, not healthy, disastrous. You can all hear about it on the first 10 episodes and learn more about that. But it's very interesting because I had a close friend, one of my closest friends. I've been friends with her for 22 years. So Ted and Tara. And the way they go about conflict was that they'd be very almost very a matter of fact, no, I don't like that. I'm not okay with that. And the other one would be just as much, yeah, that's not going to work for me either. And it seemed kind of alarming to me from my background, but it actually worked for both of them. And they were both able to resolve it where it benefited them both. They both felt good about it. That is not a conflict style that would work for myself. And it's really good to know where you came from and what works for you. I think the most important is you have to decide with your partner how you're going to go about it. It's like creating your own adventure. You have to be proactive, and it has to work for both of you. Some keys to this, I would say that there's 4 keys. First one is you have to start off with knowing that you're a team that loves and supports each other. If it's about power and winning or arguing, that does not work. It is very rare that both parties are going to feel benefited in that sort of scenario. I met a young man on the plane, a really nice young man, 24 years old, so sweet, got into a great conversation. And I was talking about conflict and being like, okay, you're single. What do you want in a gal? How do you want to resolve conflict? And he was mentioning how his family, they love to argue. And I had to mention, I'm like, well, be sure that the one that you're with actually enjoys that, because most women actually don't enjoy a debate or loving to argue. That doesn't feel good. And it's true, that just doesn't feel good. But if both parties love that and they can work through that and they both feel good about that style, then have at it. So first of all, though, it has to be a team that loves and supports each other. Second thing, I think it's super important to know that 90% of conflict is misunderstandings. How does this happen? Well, easily, because we actually have conversations with ourselves, they have conversations with themselves, and sometimes we have conversations together. And what that means is what I hear gets processed through my past, through my thoughts, through my beliefs, through my opinions. And so I hear things differently than that the other partner is going to hear things. And he has his past, his his programming, his thoughts, his opinions. So you can see how easy it is to have misunderstandings. So really, conflict is really kind of coming to a better understanding. But just know that 90% of conflict is misunderstandings and not personal. It's about coming together and having an understanding. For me, my life was the kind girl, doing the right things, being a Christian, marrying a Christian guy. And really, the relationship was very destructive to me. And I ended up in the psych ward twice and got labeled bipolar at the time. And it was just a very challenging, awful situation. And so we weren't going to, there wasn't mutuality in working things out. And so I chose a divorce. And then I just questioned myself. I questioned all the whys and questioned my beliefs that got me there and all of my people pleasing and my serving, and really had to rediscover myself and healthy relationship with God and myself and others. And it was a process. So I created the Unravel notebook, and that was the process that helped me go from that situation to living a life abundantly as a realtor and a life coach and really thriving in a beautiful marriage. And that's what I want to help others do as well, and create their life by intention to live brighter one day at a time. Third, you really have to care about each other's thoughts and feelings. You can't be like, well, they need to think like me, or I don't care about their feelings, which I think a lot of women are like, can feel this way, is that their partner doesn't care about their feelings. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think sometimes men have a hard time maybe expressing that or showing that in conflict, or what that looks like. Because again, conflict is not something, and conflict resolution isn't something we just know. We have our blueprint, and then we have a colliding of two different people with two different ideas. But it is something we can learn, train ourselves, come to a process of doing it for ourselves and the other person, and it being a place that brings us closer. So again, knowing that first, you're a team that loves and supports each other. Second, 90% of conflict is misunderstandings. Third, each other's thoughts and feelings are important. And then knowing what the goal of conflict is. So the goal, when you're having conflict with your partner, is to know and understand each other more deeply and more intimately, and figure out how to work together more. So I think that's super important. I think it's also super important that during conflict, we're both willing to say, I'm sorry, because honestly, we're all kind of messed up a little bit, and that's just part of being human, and that's okay. And we all have areas of blindness and growth, and we all have differences. So I really love the BARF notebook. I know I talk about the Unravel notebook that I created, and in the back of it is the BARF notebook. And basically it's a process of barf it out, sort it out, plan it out. Because I'm not a person that can go right into a conflict and be concise, like, this is how I feel, this is what's going on, da 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 da. I'm actually not very good at that. And I think I'm not alone. I think there's quite a few of us that cannot just come out with it. But I will tell you that if I have a conflict and I just let it ruminate in me, that is like the worst in the world. So really getting into that BARF notebook and barfing out my feelings and thoughts, sorting it out, and then planning it out is a great way to resolve conflict. And this actually works really well with my husband and I. And I have to laugh because he was always like, well, why does it take you like a day or a little bit of time before you bring up something? I go, well, it's because, I do this process and da da da. And he's like, well, why don't you just, express yourself next time? Just do it without doing that. So I did it, and it was awful. And I have to laugh. So basically, you're going to laugh at this. The squeaky door of our master bedroom was waking me up at night, because he'd get up during the night and go out and it would squeak, and it was horrible. And he said like 3 times, it's like, yeah, I'm going to get rid of that squeak. And I'm thinking in my mind, if he says it, of course he's going to do it. He's going to get rid of the squeak. And so the squeak woke me up, and I am like a bear to be woken up. I do not like being woken up. I treasure my sleep. Probably because the lack of sleep for those 2 times was part of my psych ward visit. But I really treasure sleep. And so that's important to me. So anyways, I was upset, and I was tired. I was working really hard, and he's in a place in his life, which was a surprise to us both, where he's more in a retired state and resting from 30 years of long work while his partner is buying out his business. But neither of us were expecting this much time together, and it's a lot of time together. So I don't think that helped either. So anyways, the squeaky door, and I am upset because he said he was going to do it like 3 times and it's not done, and I'm tired and upset, and so I try to fix it myself, and I didn't do so well because I didn't realize with the squeaky door you have to like pound it out, and you have to put some grease on it and this and that and put it back in. Anyways, I was not happy. So I thought I would do what he asked me to do and just express myself. So I just go down, I'm like, can I talk to you? He's like, yeah. I go, and then I'm like, I'm really frustrated, and I'm almost in tears. And he was a little bit shocked because he didn't know what to do with that. And I was so upset. I didn't have the foresight to say, hey, I need you to just listen. I need to vent. Like, this isn't a problem-solving thing as much as, yeah, we do need to solve the issue of the squeaky door, but I really need to just vent. So he's like, oh my goodness, what do I do with this? So later, after we worked through the conflict, he realized, now I know why you like to process and work it out, and it is a lot easier because then you come to me with very concisely how you feel, what you want, and all of that, and that makes for an easier flow. So, got the squeaky door done. What I learned is that Michael likes to say, yeah, I'll do that. He says things flippantly, and that's actually a very normal way of doing things. And I'm not that way. I'm like, you say you're going to do it, you're going to do it, and that's how it is. So we worked together and figured out, like, for him to know that it's important to me and that, I really want this done, I can put it on a list. That's super easy for him. It doesn't offend him. And then it actually gets done. And so we just work to understand each other and how our communication styles are different and how we can work together. Squeaky door. So it brought us closer together. And that's what conflict has the power to do, is to create more intimacy, more understanding, and it's a beautiful thing. Or it could be a horrible thing. So just a few things as far as like, okay, first of all, figure out like your style, how you guys work with conflict, what doesn't work for you, and have a proactive plan. And then there's a process I want to go through. And this again is really between you and your partner, because it really just depends on who you are. But I would say, first of all, number 1 is set a time. Make sure it's a good time for your partner and you to be talking about it. Like if they're tired or exhausted, that's probably not a good time. Or if, like for me, if I'm super pissed off, that's not a good time either. When I'm all about feeling anger, feeling different things, but I don't feel like that's usually the best time to be working on conflict resolution. So for me, I need to process through those feelings first in order to do that. So I have to make time for myself in order to process it, make sure it's a time for my partner, my husband in this case. And also, I need to give him a warning. And that's for my husband's brain. Like, he's like, don't just, because I can switch topics like this and track really fast. And that's part of my brain, part of, I don't know, sometimes part of the female brain, but just part of my brain. And he takes slower to switch. So really, for me to say, hey, can I talk about something that I want to work through with you? Or when is a good time to talk about something to work through with you? We also have weeding Saturdays, so that every Saturday we check in with each other and talk about if there's anything we need to weed. And that means just pulling out those little things and those little weeds, those misunderstandings, those challenges, and working through them, because it's nothing like the little weeds that can really make a garden full of weeds, and really, so you're not really appreciating each other, and that's very sad. So time. Second one, it really works better rather than blaming the person, is to express your feelings. Like, when this happened, I thought this, and then I felt this way. Because it's not really fair to be like, when you did this, I felt this way. Because people aren't necessarily responsible for our feelings, and our thoughts and feelings are important. So those two things have to be balanced. But usually it's when a circumstance happens, and then you put a thought, or when I put a thought to that circumstance, then that's created a feeling. And so it's like, hey, when this happened, this is what I was thinking, and this is what I was feeling. And just expressing that. And again, that is why I go to the barf notebook and like process that, because I'm not naturally able to do that very quickly. It's a process for me. And it's a great way to go through that process. So that would be the second, is express your feelings. And then the third is just stating clearly what you want. It's really important, especially with men, because I think men are naturally fixers. And not, I'm generalizing, but fixers, they want to fix, they want to please you, but sometimes they just specifically need to know what to do. And it's super frustrating to them if they don't know exactly what you want, because they want to please you. And so again, that's why I take some time in the barf notebook to figure out, well, this is actually what I want. I could want like a better understanding of his thoughts or thinking. I could a better understanding of this, hey, this is a priority to me and I would like to make room for this in our lives. But specifically asking for what you want. So those are the 3 things I would say. And then always understand the goal is to know and understand each other better and to work with each other in a close and loving way. If it gets too heated, I say just take a little break. Don't let it go too long. But sometimes I don't really think conflict resolves really well when people are heated and angry. So sometimes it's best to know like, hey, I see, we're this is getting hot and stuff like that. Let's just take a break and revisit this maybe tomorrow or something like that. And that helps. And again, that's a wonderful time to go to the barf notebook and be like, hey, I'm really pissed off and da 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 and da 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 da. And is there another way to see this? And what are the facts? What boundaries have been crossed? What is really important to me? And that's what that barf notebook does, is it really helps you process through all of that. So that's the thoughts on conflict. It can be, I think something that's super important too is that basically relationships die one lack of conversation at a time. So I know a lot of people think, oh yeah, it's just sweet. We just kind of brush over and don't have conflict. But actually the intimacy and the relationship dies that way. So it's very important to have these difficult conversations and to have these intimate conversations. It also dies if it becomes like a place where one person is doing well and getting what they want in the conflict, and the other one is getting really hurt by the process. And so that's something else that can be really hard, whether it's like a loud verbally attacking or like I'm not willing to do conflict with you. I think for me, having a partner, like when I was married 22 years, having someone who is not willing to do conflict with me and not willing to work through things really gave me the message that I wasn't important. And, really I think everyone can learn to do conflict well. It's definitely takes the time and skill, and you can do it. So it's super important. I think it's definitely hard if you're a kind girl. We talk a lot about that kind girl syndrome. And I think a lot of us as kind girls, at least for me, I have to be really honest about what I want, what is important to me, and be willing to even know that, first of all, and then be willing to share that, because that's what creates intimacy. And you can grow your conversation one conversation at a time. You can kill your conversation one lack of conversation at a time. You can create intimacy or death by 1,000 cuts. The choice is yours. I believe in you. I believe we can change 1% at a time. Live brighter in this world and have a great day.